yes, I wanted to be the first to point out that we are up on stage here, sandwiched between the past attempts to impose order on complexity, the present and the future versions of getting some simplicity out of complexity. Our topic in this panel is people and organizations, the impact of complexity on people and organizations, which couldn't really be broader. We have 4 excellent guides to take us through this. Fredmund Malik, chairman of the Malik Management Center at St. Gallen. John Hagel, co-chair of the Deloitte Center for the Edge. Tim Brown, CEO and president of IDEO. And via video link, via Skype, we're going to have Umair Haq, director of the Havas Media Group. The topic is complexity. The format is relatively simple. Each of our speakers is going to talk for 15 minutes maximum, 10 to 15 minutes. Then we are going to open almost immediately to questions from the floor, which I hope will be really bubbling up by then, and discuss those as a panel for the next, we hope, as much as an hour, which will be, I think, ample time to get into some of the questions that are bound to be raised. So please get your questions ready. I will go straight into the panelists' presentations and ask Fredmund to kick us off. Fredmund Malik.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor and it is a privilege and also a pleasure to be here for the second time. And I'm going to talk about one solution or solutions, but in particular about one for mastering organizational complexity. So to make executives, with whom I have to deal a lot, enabled to grasp an idea of what goes on outside there, I take this picture, and this enables it, makes it very easy to them. It is a picture of a substitution process, as you see. One thing which exists, depicted with the red curve, no political relations intended. The red curve here goes on, we have made business, all went well, but very silently, something new stepped in, the green curve, and it threatens to substitute what existed. And it always succeeds in substituting it. So we have the agricultural society having been substituted by the industrial society between the early 18th and 19th century. Or then at the medium scale, it was the substitution of the horse cart by the automobile, or then the landline telephone by the mobile smartphone, or recently the analog photography substituted by the digital image processing, or again at the larger scale, the monarchy is substituted by the democracies. And I think this makes it somewhat easy to orientate oneself, because otherwise one easily gets lost in all those complex dimensions. And this shows that there is a very critical decision zone, it's depicted here, and that we first of all have revolutionary machines, revolutionary technologies, which have always been one of the causes of these processes, but now I think we are on the verge of needing revolutionary organizations and also revolutionary kinds of management, because problem solving, decision making, creation of consensus, for instance, implementing decisions need a new, this is what I'm suggesting, new kinds of social methodologies or social technologies. And actually, if one is at this line here, which depicts today, we are in the midst of these turmoils, and I would like to invite you to understand all the different crises as part of one historically probably unique substitution process. And I think one can understand it best if you look at it at the birth, the labor pains of a new world, actually. So the old world getting substituted by a new world. Today we have we call it, or some people call it, disruptive change. It's all okay. I prefer somewhat more Schumpeter's expression of creative destruction. Because there is something new, but it destroys something which we cherish and which already existed. But on the other hand, if there is something destructed, it is substituted by something new. And I used to call it, from the 1990s when I began to publish on that, the Great Transformation 21, thereby paying tribute to two persons, namely Karl Polanyi and also Peter Drucker, who has written a lot of transformations, and so I think it depicts him also very well. The transition from an old world to a new world. Contemporaries always had the same, contemporaries of such processes always reacted in the same way. First of all, they are not only blind or blinded, they are actually conceptually unable to perceive what goes on. It's a conceptual difficulty, like those people who did not grasp the Copernican revolution. They were not able to see the solar system differently. So they do not have to be blamed for that. The second, if they waken up, they deny it. Many people these days do, because they want to restore the old world pre-2007, for instance, if you take that date. And then they fight for survival, and then they get extinct. And the others will conquer the empty place. So these processes are exceedingly complex, globally interconnected systems, and the dynamics of self-feeding change. And the process largely is unpredictable in its details. The pattern, I think, is quite predictable, or we can at least expect it, and then we can make scenarios, and then we can prepare ourselves. It's unpredictable, it's non-computable in detail, and we need three strategies. You see, we need the one to go on with the red curve as long as it is okay and it is delivering its fruits, and the other one is preparing for the substituting curve, and then we have to have a strategy and a technology, a social technology, to do the transition from the red curve to the green curve. So it's a triple challenge, so to speak. And what is important is that the most precious resources become worthless. Among them, the knowledges of the red curve, on which all our successes rest. Second, our experiences, because in the green world, nothing could be more worthless than experiences from the red world. It becomes even the greatest obstacle. Capital allocation begets unproductive. We lose orientation, navigation, control, and so on. So conventional management will not do it, no longer do it. So these things we cherish, small teams, series of workshops, management meetings, and all these things will not suffice to manage these challenges. These things, these methodologies have become more the curve, slowing down, paralyzing, producing conflicts and compromises on the lowest common denominator, and this is not enough. So the solution does not come from business administration. We need different sciences, and I prefer to talk about the complexity sciences, which are systemics, three of them, science of systemics, or system theory, which is about coherent wholes. The science of cybernetics, which I take to be the science of functioning. And then bionics, which is the science of learning from nature, solutions in order to transfer the principles of naturally evolved solutions, not themselves, but the principles of them, to all human organizations. In this context, we use natural laws of functioning for mastering complexity. And I take management as that societal function which enables organizations and systems of society to function. So complexity is basically, as I understand it, the raw material of intelligence. And our brains, of course, and brain research is teaching us more and more about that. So we can use the laws of self-regulation, of self-organization, and of interrelated collaboration and of communication, not only between individuals and small teams, but within the large organizations and between large organizations. Foundations are put in my books in 1984 with the title Strategy of Complex Systems. Of course, the networks which have been shown to us are all okay, but then within those networks, you will find places which are more highly structured than others and which have more capacity to use intelligence for many purposes. So one solution is what I call the hyper-syntegration. So I'm talking about the new social technology, which is called basically in its inner engine, so to speak, syntegration, a combination word from synergy and integration. Credits go to the late Stafford Beer, who was a close friend of mine, and we collaborated a lot with regard to this in the context of this subject. So syntegration goes right into the void between the small team, which we know is effective, but it has very little power because it is too small, and the large conference, 50, 500, 1,000 persons, which has all its expertise and knowledge, and it would have the power, but it ends up in chaos or in prefabricated declarations or things like that. Not so with syntegration. This is the means of changing and moving organizations through this kind of substitutional turbulences. Syntegration is a communication process which is free, absolutely free of hierarchy, which people like. It's the means to absolutely equal participation of very large numbers of people, starting with 30, and then you can multiply it. The largest one has been done with 400 executives, 500 executives in one of the large automobile manufacturers. And you can include that way the socio-cultural, not only the knowledges and the expertise, but also the socio-political, cultural elements, which we call followership if we want to have leadership. Think of a symphony, probably. We are in Vienna here, and if you think of playing a symphony, 100 musicians and a choir and so on, and then we could imagine two ways, namely playing with the individual instruments one at a time. So you first the violins play their parts, and then the violas, and then the cello, and then the oboes, and so on and so forth. And in the end, it would be a very long sequence of music. And in the end, we would have played every single note which the composer has written, but it would not be a symphony. Every element is there, but it's not a symphony. So if we managed, and of course in music we do, to let them play all together in a symphonic way, this comes close to what is going on in a syntegration. It brings solutions on three levels. One is the subject level of the immediate key challenge, which the company or the organization has chosen to tackle with syntegration. The second one is the level of socio-cultural emotions, and social energy, as we could call it. And then there is an enormous acceleration of all these processes of arriving at the consensus, of making consensual decisions and implementation. And what takes months and months and even years happens with integration in a couple of days in the single standalone format, and then in a couple of weeks and months if we multiply it, because it feeds into an exponential curve. The standalone format increases the effectiveness of the top level of an organization by a factor of 80 as compared to the small team, and it accelerates decision-making, action, by a factor of 100. Integration removes friction and conflict from the organization. The basic number is 30 to 40 people, so this alone is 5 to 6 times larger and more effective if we arrange it correctly than the small team. It unleashes intelligence captured within the old forms of organizations. It releases a thrust of emotional energy, thereby being able to change moods and even to change minds. It creates consensus on a maximum level and not on the minimal level. It aligns, it attunes, it saves resources in the two-digit realms, and it produces a satisfactory index, so to speak, of 90%. We have done 600 such integrations, and all of them, without any exceptions, were successful in the way just described. The organizations, if you think of them, 100,000 people, for instance, large organizations, how many people do we need in order to really move it? Experience shows it's 0.5% to 2%, but of course one can multiply it. So how many organizations do we have? In Germany alone, it is 4 million. And worldwide, I'm estimating some 150 million of organizations. Not all of them are important, not all of them are probably needed, but many of them. And they are confronted by these challenges. And they somehow have to survive if society shall function also in the future in a different shape. So, it has been applied by large businesses, automobile companies, for instance, airports, German cities, saving them from insolvency, Chinese cities, Chinese universities, and many others. And I think that this is one of the tools organizations real leadership, but not in an autocratic way, but leadership to make those hard and